ჭირება გიორგი არ არის?
არა. გიორგი არ არის.
ბურთს გვატყავებდა ხალბე.
არ არის თქო.
Hi everyone who's watching, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or the Static Vision website, you've just seen through Myth Play, What Do We See When We Look at the Sky, the latest film from Alexandre Koberidze. We are very happy to have him here on the line, live, taking your questions, taking our questions. We hope that all of you love the film as much as we do. It's quite a transportative journey. So yeah, we're really thrilled to have you here, Alexandre.
Yeah, I'm also very happy that the film is still running and people are watching it. And thank you that in these difficult times, you still manage somehow to bring the film to the audience. It's great.
Yeah, I think it's definitely strange for us and for everyone here in Melbourne, and most of Australia are actually being locked down at the moment. But I think the film is a really good sort of thing to watch. It's got a real sense of place and it transports you. You really feel like you're in this city for 2.5 hours. I think it's like, and I think a lot of people who watched tonight felt that as well. On that, I want to kind of ask about the city that it's set in. It's very much a hangout film, if that's the right phrase. You spend a lot of time in this place. What did this city mean to you and why did you choose to film in
it? I studied in Berlin and we had a teacher there for a few years, Martin Machewski, who always referred, or somehow the films he showed us were very different, but somehow the taste, which is I share with some students I studied together with, and also with our teacher, the sentence he always said that he liked the films where you can take a walk. Somehow I think it's these words which somehow stayed with me and also with other students, because we shared this kind of filmmaking somehow. And the film I made before was placed in Tbilisi, in capital of Georgia, and it's even more kind of a portrait of a city, but it's also fictional film, but you can see quite a lot from the city. And this time I thought I have to go some other way, just do something really different. So I wanted to concentrate on one location, maybe a small cafe on the river, and just stay for the whole film there. And then I just remembered that there in Kutaisi there is this place, so that was the plan. But then when I arrived there and I spent almost a year with the cameraman and producer in the city, kind of we took our walks through the city, we met the people, and then slowly, like every day, the script started to change because we understood we discover places and we want to share it somehow through the film, and we just didn't close ourselves. Somehow we tried to open and not get really strict with the concept to stay at one place, but more to open it. And the more we were opening, the more things we got offered somehow every day. So that was kind of the way, exploring the city and making the script and storyboard every day with these things.
We've actually got an early question from a chat here, which is about how you shot the city. What was behind the decision to shoot both on 16mm and digital when you were approaching it? Was that something that came up when you were spending a year in the city with your cameraman, or was it something that came, a solid plan that you had?
We share kind of the same problem with the cinematographer of the film, with very high resolution cameras, because somehow we don't really know how to handle it, or not handle it, but like what is it meant to do, like with this kind of equipment, because it's really hard. The film I made before was made with a small cell phone, and it's much easier, not in a way that you need less people and it's easier to handle, but also in a way that you see less, which is kind of important while filmmaking, because in shoot 4K you see so much, and hiding stuff is also really interesting. So and it's a general problem, I think, for everyone. And we wanted to make some change in a visual experience when this curse starts.
Yeah.
So basically, our idea was to play also with an image, and for a long time we were thinking to start with also digital cameras with less resolution, and to go higher and higher, to have in the end it's really high, but like we thought maybe to work with 5-6 cameras to make this change from maybe very pixely and then go up to 4K. And at some point we thought that it was too much, but maybe just make one cut, and before the curse have the medium which we kind of appreciate, and then the curse comes, and then the hard part starts when for us also it gets hard to make pictures.
That's an interesting sort of sense of like putting life into the film in a different way, because it sounds like when you were spending that year in the city, you were taking bits that you saw and people you heard and things like that. How much of the film would you think of as like documentary or ethnography, and how much of it is tightly scripted?
We had almost 2 weeks of kind of a documentary shooting with very small team, 4 people, camera, sound, and no actors. Almost a year before we started the actual shooting. And from this material, many pictures are now in the film. Besides this, what we also tried to do was always to find kind of a background for some fictional moments, maybe where our actors are doing something, or there is a scene which we created, but always to have a background which is not controlled. Not always, but as much as we can, to have somehow this exchange of planned and unplanned things. So even in moments when our actors do some things which I told them or they were scripted, often we see things in the background which are just a coincidence. And it was kind of a concept for us. We always looked for the places where it was possible to shoot like this, or we were looking for a time to have. We were trying to have time to shoot the scenes which were planned, but also to have possibility to sometimes turn the camera in a different direction to shoot some things which were not planned or some things like this. So we tried to do it as much as possible, but again, with this huge camera and big team, it's not always doable. But it was for us important to make this mix of planned and unplanned.
Does that kind of play into the notion of magic that sort of plays out through the film with, of course, the fairy tale setting and stuff like that, and kind of the discussion around cinema as magic? Was that sort of your intention with the coincidental things happening in the background that maybe were out of your control? Was it part of that broader idea?
Also, I had this this kind of experience with my film. I made with the one before where I just discovered that you can plan, but sometimes things happen just right next to your set, which are much more interesting than everything what you were thinking for a whole year. So to have the possibility and also this kind of be open for this small things and to be kind of prepared to catch it too, because I see these things as presents, kind of given to you from I don't know whom, but somehow they appear and you have to be ready to accept it. So sometimes I had a clear feeling I've missed it, but sometimes I had a feeling, wow, we were able to catch it. Sometimes you don't have to do anything because something enters your frame without you doing anything, and then it's again kind of present. And on the contrary, sometimes things happen which make all your plan, I don't know, then it doesn't work because, I don't know, some car comes in and you have to shoot again because you don't want this car. It's kind of where we try to never block, so things can happen, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, but mostly in my experience, the things which happen take all things in a direction which I like.
It's funny that you talk about the car going into the shot, because it reminded me of the section at the start of the film in which the character is meant to hear something from the wind, but the car gets in the way. There's this sense of like chance plays a part even in the story. And while that happens as part of the story, we've had a few questions now in our chat about the narration. There's these moments in the film in which you come in narration, scenes that could be, as you say, like moments of happenstance, a soccer ball getting pulled out into the sea. But the narration is very clear and very intentional in what it's saying and what it's reminding us of what's not being seen. At what point did you decide to add that narration? Was it always the plan, or was it something that came up in the edit?
Many things, almost everything what the storyteller is saying now in the film was scripted, but not everything. At some point I understood that I needed more, so also for some places I had a dialogue. Actually, I silenced the actors and added the voice to give the narrator like more place. I don't know, for me, every film I made in my life had a narrator. So somehow I'm planning now another film, and I think I'll try again to make it without, but again, it will be with. But as I try to make some a fairy tale, I think it's at least in my understanding of fairy tales, this kind of a narration of someone telling like basics of the story which you can follow after is an essential part of it. I grew up my grandma was reading very often to me when I was a kid, but also later, I think when I was a teenager also, and I liked it very much. So I started to read actually pretty late because I was really used to someone that I hear everything. So I think that this kind of past brought me to this kind of filmmaking that the stories are often told with voice. And on a very, in a way, when we talk about filmmaking, like what is always hard for me and what is sometimes annoying for me while working is making pictures, shooting scenes which have uh, they are there to bring some information, and I always try to somehow avoid it because it's not fun, because they're somehow functional. So then at some point I discovered that with this narrator I can really make a small part of the film where the things which maybe need much more time and many scenes which have to be then full with some informations, I can go this way and just tell the things and then shoot the things which I'm more interested in.
It is funny that, so I just, what you're saying then about narration sort of truncating exposition, you use it all the time on the filmmakers within the film, the people who are making this documentary about partners. Most of their dialogue you don't hear because the narrator comes in to be like, nope, move along. That's not the focus. Which is really funny to see the filmmaker step in and truncate the filmmakers.
Yeah, the same reason, I think, because it was a bit hard. I tried to have kind of a simple concept, how the story is and how the story works, but still, I think someone who watches the film has to understand what these filmmakers are doing and what their relation is with the story of the couple and stuff like this. And I had a feeling all these dialogues they speak and all the scenes are very functional, and it's really easy to understand why watch it if they speak by themselves, because these dialogues were not quite short and they're only just to tell what they're doing. So it kind of at some point annoyed me that also as a viewer I really don't like it. I think it's kind of more censor way to say, okay, these dialogues are here to tell you this and this, and let's move to the next stage. So.
We've just got a question from our chat that I'll read it verbatim. The film is a film with so much sweetness that the 2 or so moments of narrative darkness actually hit really hard, considering it's just 2 small parts of voiceover. What drove the choice to both briefly include those bits of darkness and then kind of pull back, or I guess overt darkness? Yeah.
I knew that these 2 parts would come in any film I would have done now. The things where I really wanted to say and say somehow really directly and without hiding them in some metaphors or making a film out of it where it's part of it, but it's subtext or something like this. But I knew it doesn't matter what kind of film I will make, this one or some other one. I have to find a place in this film and say these few words. And yeah, and yeah, I also somehow tried to put it really, I don't know, somehow on one hand, the text was more radical than I changed. I think now it has the right level of being angry, or I don't know, being desperate. Maybe sometimes I think maybe it was it's a bit pity because it was more, but somehow I'm not sure because sometimes too much is too much. So and this film got is I agree it has this sweetness, but somehow it was also not a plan to make a film which is this sweet. I we just followed some rhythm and some gifts and presents um, for while shooting and also while writing and preparing, and this is very these are somehow our emotions. I think that's how we felt while doing this film. But as I said, I knew from the beginning it doesn't matter which direction the film goes. There are these things I want to say. I just have to find the right moment to have it. And at some point, then I discovered that I can make these two parts of the film, and in the middle, it's the. Now I think it's the place where it's now. It's quite okay. Yeah.
I understand there's the river in the film, which some people was they were watching pointed out how sort of not violent, but how intense it is and how close it is to everyone. I understand that there is some political movement happening in Georgia at the moment that is related to that river, and I wondered whether, could you deliver that voiceover over a shot of the river, whether that was linked at all.
Yeah, this movement started after when I already finished the film, I think, or a bit before, but definitely when we were shooting it, we didn't know about it, anything. But it's also a coincidence which makes now sense for me. So I think it's not only a coincidence. They are trying to build a huge water plant, like hydropower plant, not far from the city. And the people from around the city, from the city and from the villages which have to go under the water, they are fighting against it now almost 300 days and nights. They are not sleeping there and making big protests, yes. Because it's a treat for everything, for the town and for people, yeah.
Yeah, there's a real sort of like sense of this town as a community where there's, you know, things that happen every year, or there's the bars that everyone goes to, there's the dogs that everyone knows.
I think have a couple of questions about the dogs, actually. So I might jump in with those. Just from our chat, someone wanted to say they love the sly personification of the local football loving dogs in the film, and we're wondering where that idea came from.
With the dogs, it's the story is also like with the town and the script. I had many dogs in my previous film, dogs from Tbilisi, and I thought, okay, because in with the previous film there were also so many dogs, and it was very obvious that the film is kind of full with these dogs. And this time I thought, okay, this time maybe no dogs, but it was not impossible. But I also at some point decided not to do anything against it. It was never planned to have them or shoot them, but we also said we don't fight against them. I mean, we liked them, and we also always had food for them on set, but also we never blocked our picture against dogs. So, and they are happy when, especially when some new people come to town, they are very happy to greet them and play with them and get some food, because people who live there, they give, of course, food, but on everyday basis, it's of course not the same when you're just new and you see these dogs and you buy food. So the tourists or some filmmakers are really good for them. And that was it. And then at some point I discovered I have this so many pictures, but I don't want it to show them just like this, but make some story. And there was this picture of when the dog is near this beer place where he really watches football. I don't know, not football, but maybe some meatballs. But you can imagine that he's doing it, so that somehow started with this picture, and then I made the story with other ones.
Yeah, cool. I've got another dog question as well. So in the film, there's obviously quite a few dogs, but there's not so many cats. And we were wondering if there was something that drew you specifically to dogs, or whether cats are just bad actors.
There is at least one cat which makes something very strange, but it's very dark scene, so not sometimes it's just hard to see. But yeah, cats are shy, and as I said, we didn't specially arrange anything for dogs or cats. So and dogs, it doesn't matter where we went, and on every location, on every place, the dogs from the neighborhood came to us and were playing and eating and doing stuff. And cats are much more shy. So it's, if you really want to have cats, you have to move and you have to look for them. And in my film before, I had many cats before, because I was looking for them. And if you do it, then you have it. But yeah, now there was no plan to have any animals in the film. I think now there is just this one cat, but it makes
a pivotal cat.
Really... Sorry?
A pivotal cat, a very important cat.
Yeah. So
yeah, absolutely. I was kind of wondering personally about the sort of external influences on the film, because it's got a very specific look that seems maybe more inspired by nostalgia or a memory than it is other films necessarily. But I was kind of wondering whether any other films that sort of influenced the specific color palette, or whether it came from somewhere else.
We were watching quite a lot of films like before, while preparing the film, but also while doing it. And yeah, we tried to see the films made in this town. And as it's second biggest town in Georgia, and there are quite a few which are made there. But also we watched some Iranian films. With the cinematographer of this film is from Iran, so we were able to see some films which, at least for me, where I didn't knew them, like the films which are most known inside the country, not internationally. And I think it has had also a big impact on the film, because sometimes some great films stay inside the country because they have more like a local aspects. And I don't know, everybody knows Kiarostami, but there are some other directors who are more well known inside the country. So we were able to see this kind of films, and also some Georgian films, but also, I don't know, many things like is Nani Moretti. For me, it's I think one of the Nani Moretti and Ottario Celiani, like the how you handle the city and how you film people. I think maybe these two directors who we were following quite near. Also, storyboarding or sometimes the whole scenes which we then try to recreate for our film. Use of music, working with actors.
Yeah, the influence, like I'm not sure if this was at all an influence on your work, but the first sort of 10-15 minutes really struck me as like reminiscent of some of the late Robert Bresson films, like Four Nights of a Dreamer and The Devil, probably. Not only because of, the shots of feet and the shots of hands, but just the way he matter-of-factly shot the cities and how warm it was, how warm the film grain was, how warm the color was. Yeah.
Yeah, Bresson is. I try to be very careful because somehow when you watch Bresson, when I watch Bresson, that it becomes somehow the art of filmmaking, which it has to be like after watching these films, you go out of the cinema and you think, okay, this is cinema, and it's really easy to get really influenced by these things, and but yeah, when I started to make the storyboard and I was making it more or less chronologically. I think in the beginning I was very much into, because before I watched many times the films you mentioned now and also others by Bresson. So when I started, it started really with this big influence of him, and but then somehow it went to other direction. Like my plan was to stick in this way more to this kind of filmmaking, but I didn't close the possibilities for other things. So I think after 1, 2, 3 days, it went to other directions. We watched other films, and then other influences came in. But yeah, the beginning was definitely, I don't know how to say, yeah, Bresson was there, yes.
Just another question about influences from the chat. The film's obviously got a fairy tale structure. Just from the chat, they were wondering if there were any particular fairy tales from Georgia or elsewhere that kind of were a particular inspiration, or whether it's a totally fresh sort of thing.
I had a few months or even a year, I think, when I was reading many kinds of fairy tales from around the world, because I have another script. It's a fairy tale, and I wanted to write this script, which I knew I wanted to make this one also a fairy tale. So somehow I tried to enter this world. I also remember like everything from childhood, from my teenager time. I can't remember to have a specific fairy tale which this script is based on, but I think it's kind of influence of many different things, or more like this world of possibilities, where when you dive into this world, you get this freedom that basically anything can happen, and it's up to you what can speak and what not, and like you can set the rules of the entire universe. But also, I don't know. I can imagine that I read something like this somewhere, but I think it's a mix.
Cool. I also had a question about the choice of location. So, what were your main considerations when you transformed the real Kutaisi into your sort of fantasy vision? Was it mostly, obviously you've talked already about a lot of incidental things happening on set. Did you mostly let your experience there over the year that you were staying there sort of guide the way you portrayed it? Or was there a particular image you wanted to place on that location and feeling to it?
Kutaisi is it's really hard of our country geographically, but also culturally. And there are many connections, like many things which are connected with this town. Even if I don't live there, I know many things about the past of this town, because if you go to school, you learn stuff about Kutaisi, because many important things started there, happened there. So somehow, even without even being or spent a day there, you kind of have a feeling to know the city. But of course, this feeling is from poems, from books, from films. And I think I arrived there with this kind of knowledge and fantasy of this place. On the other hand, the reality of Kutaisi today is very different, because the 90s, after Soviet Union collapse, was really hard for this place. Yeah, people have quite a hard life, and especially for young people, it's hard because it's a very small city, not so much going on. So I trying to make a balance to show some things from the city without romanticize, kind of without this romantic vision. And at some point, I knew, okay, maybe it's still too sweet, but on the other hand, I knew I'm making a fairy tale, so it's a pure fiction, even if we see sometimes the reality in the background, or even in pictures without actors, where we see some street. It's still through this lens of that this is fairy tale. So even the stories the storyteller is telling us about the city and about traditions, we never know what is true and what is a lie. Sometimes it sounds like that he's telling us some real stories, but I wouldn't trust in everything.
On that sense of reflecting the city, have you screened the film in the city, or do you plan to?
Not yet. We had also like everything closed here.
Yeah.
Till maybe now for a month, the things are open, maybe a bit longer. But yeah, we're waiting for some festival in Georgia, which is not in Kutaisi.
Yeah.
And then we definitely make a screening there. But I want to wait for a moment where I won't have a bad feeling for bringing people in some closed space. Because now I think in September there is a festival where we should have a screening, and somehow I have a strange feeling. On one hand, you want the people to go there. On the other hand, I have a feeling I have to write and ask people not to go, because I don't know, it's 2.5 hours, closed space. Yes, everyone wears a mask, but if someone got infected while watching my film, then it's really a bad feeling. So yeah, not yet, but definitely will do.
I feel like an open space that would be good is that cafe. with the projector
Yeah.
sliding around onto all the landmarks.
Yes, maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to put a call out for everyone watching. If you've got any more questions, we are taking them in the chat, and we'll be passing them on, but we might wrap up a little bit soon. I did want to ask you, or kind of more a statement than a question, but on what you were saying about the difficult life that people kind of had, younger people in that town. I found it really interesting in the film how we don't necessarily see people toiling throughout the film. So our characters find themselves in the bodies of others, and instead of another film which might focus on their struggle as they try to reclaim whatever their life was before, or the struggle of trying to paste back together the relationship that could have been, instead our characters seem almost content to just carry on, or maybe not content, but to accept their situation once their bodies have changed. And we don't really see that struggle for them to find each other again after a couple of initial visits to the cafe when it becomes apparent that it's futile. I was kind of interested in your thoughts about that, and thoughts about, I guess, kind of adopting that fairy tale structure where things are as they are, in the context of, maybe the difficult time over there.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing what I said about the use of narrator, where sometimes it gets hard when you have scenes which are there to have some information. I had the same problem with also already while writing, but also like shooting, or after, to make scenes where we have to know and get these emotions or their feelings about things happening. It's bad or good, or how they're dealing with this, or what they are doing. Are they trying to find each other? Are they not? Because like the basic interest for us was to look at these people in a moments, in their daily lives. So somehow the concept was that on one hand, I was trying to explain it in a way that I don't know, because there were these discussions, of course, with the script and with some people who we had to discuss the script, because they were asking why they are not doing anything and why they don't do this and that. But like my answer was always that you have to imagine if it happens to you, like what would you do? And somehow maybe, of course, if it happens to me now, it would be different, because if you think in a really realistic way, there are different things you can at least try, because you have friends or parents or relatives. I don't know.
Plus, you also have the irony of making a film about it, which would just be cruel from the universe for it to happen to you after tempting fate.
Yeah. But yeah, you have to accept some rules, like because you are in a fairy tale, and there are things which are not happening. On the other hand, I also think that they are doing things, so maybe they are even panicking sometimes, or crying, or looking for each other, or running through the streets, but these are not the moments when we see them. So it was, for me, this kind of idea of giving some private space to the characters started even before this film, just while watching other films, and thinking about how much sometimes it annoys me to get very private with characters, to see how they kiss, or how they say I love you to another person, in the moments where you really want to be alone. To give this possibility to characters, it was for me also a kind of experiment to see what happens if I give it, and if I leave them alone in this very happy or very hard moment. And also I was thinking that these characters are also kind of wise, or also well, kind of cool enough to not to show their emotions to everyone, but keep it by themselves, and not to speak, and not to make a big drama out of their very private problem. Also, in connection, what we were already talking about, what the storyteller is telling about the big problems with the river and all our climate problems, what is same for everyone and what is a real big problem. Somehow I had a feeling it's kind of shameful for one person to make a huge drama out of his private melodramatic problem.
You've got I think it's interesting you talk about the private moments and the things that we need to not see. There's a great bit early on, right before the curse happens, when the narrator asks the audience to close their eyes, which I think, surprised a lot of people, because it is a private thing. It's not necessarily making a big deal out of the transformation. It's a way of teaching you to sort of take the film at its own pace. We've had a question in the chat about that moment, as to what you expect and want the audience to do when they get that instruction.
I as I did it, I never was in a seat to really experience it, and so I don't know what I would do in this case. So it's, and always I watched it now a few times with audience, and somehow, I don't know, I was always kind of ashamed to look around in this moment, because I thought I'll stress the people to close their eyes or not to close. Somehow I tried to concentrate on my hands, not to make a pressure and to people to do, I don't know, what they want, but it would make me definitely happy if people close their eyes, because that's kind of a game I offer, and if people participate, it's nice. I think it's something to happen. It can happen more in a cinema where many people are together, and if you see that few people around you are doing it, then maybe you do it too. And if nobody is doing it, then maybe you won't close your eyes. I think in front of, if you're alone or 2 or 3 people at home, then it's a bit hard. I think if you're alone, I can imagine that nobody is doing it, because it's kind of funny. But maybe, I don't know.
I think it's a really lovely inclusion in the film, especially because it doesn't punish you for not doing it, but you feel like you've lost out on something by not doing it. And it kind of primes you to take the film on its own terms and allow it to work as it works. I have to say, when I first watched it, I closed my eyes and then opened them again straight away to make sure I wasn't missing out on anything. Yeah. Which was, it in some way spoils the magic for yourself. yeah, it's really a really, really nice inclusion. I guess it's a bit self-explanatory. There's definitely a fairy tale element to that. Was it something that you came up with in the script phase, or something that you came up with when you were assembling the film more towards its editing stage?
It was there already in the script, because I knew somehow I had to show it, or not show, but then find some other idea how to do it with this curse. And as I also try to somehow refer to silent films and to the roots of the cinema, I thought back then it was like really fun sometimes, I think, and it was really a game, and people felt really like children, I think, watching the first film, sometimes running out and to like really have this moments of playing a game and being a child for a very short moment. So this was kind of also reference to this early moments. Yeah.
Speaking about sort of games and silent films, there's the way that music comes up in the film. I'm thinking especially of the scene in the middle with all the kids playing football, and there's the World Cup song from 1990 playing. There's a lot of music that comes up in the film that's so striking, whether it's, pieces of classical music or it is that particular song. Did you know what the musical moments were when you were writing the film? Or I know that your brother composed music for the film, but were the classical pieces, or was that World Cup song always known?
There were these two pieces. There's this Italian song, and later in the film, one Georgian song is there when he's riding on a bike. And these two songs were already in the script, but I knew that that after quite a lot of music had to be there, and we had to compose the things, because also while preparing the film and while writing, I discovered for myself that, or not discovered, but somehow decided to make a kind of a silent film. And in tradition, as we know, the silent films, the music plays a big part in it. So it was clear for me. I didn't. There were some parts I knew maybe there should be music, but it wasn't very clear. Or it wasn't clear what kind of music. There were some parts we had just notes music, this kind or that kind, but after when I got sometimes the pieces from my brother, I was adding the music to the moments where it wasn't meant to be before, and vice versa. Sometimes I thought I want the music there, but then it worked better without. But yeah, when I look now, it's quite a lot. But yeah, when you start it, then it's hard to stop.
I think it's great, that sort of like motif that just you keep hearing it. And it really reminds you, just, there's a central story here. There's the fairy tale, but there's this sort of like, not only the visual of the city, but there's this music that keeps pulling you back to the original moment, the original thread of that. We have the magic, the curse that happens very early, and the rest of the film is almost curseless, but that music keeps the feeling going and keeps us linked to that original event.
Yeah, definitely. I don't want to keep you too long. I know you probably got some stuff to do. Thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. And again, I can say big thanks for making possible that the film is watched.
Yeah. No, thank you for making the film. Yeah, just a great response all around from everyone that's been in the chat today. So yeah, huge appreciation. To everyone out at home in Australia, we'll be back in a moment. But yeah, thanks so much, Alexandre. Really appreciate it, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Bye bye.